Biarlah nama Tuhan dipuji dan dipermuliakan melalui special song yang disampaikan oleh Marsha Manulang. Saudara-saudara sekalian, ayat inti kita pada sabat siang hari ini terdapat di dalam Matius 24 ayat 14. Our scripture reading, take it from Matthew 24 verse 14. I will read it in bahasa Indonesia. Matius 24 ayat 14. Dan Injil kerajaan ini akan diberitakan di seluruh dunia menjadi kesaksian bagi semua bangsa. Sesudah itu barulah tiba kesudahannya. Demikianlah ayat inti khotbah kita pada sabat siang hari ini.
Happy Sabbath, everyone. Well, as all of you guys know, me, Deepai, and Ophelia and Nantulang, we went to Empower Ministries in September 1 through 3. And so there's a lot of seminars and general sessions, but we only have such a limited time. We're just going to touch up on 4 subjects. So the 4 subjects is leadership, what every youth leader should know, is anyone listening, and Moses and the burning bush. So I'm going to be touching up on 5 steps to leadership. So what is leadership? Some people think that leadership is a position. When someone is given the title, they think that they have the authority and that's what makes them a leader. But a leader is not just simply having a title as a leader. Leadership is influence. So there's a leadership ladder. There's 5 steps. We're going from the bottom to the top. So there's right, position, relationship, results, reproduction, and ultimate respect. So there's a ladder foundation. A leader is someone who knows how to follow. They follow before they become an actual leader. For example, the person who gave us this seminar, his name is Pastor Keith. He gave us an example of Michael Jordan. When he was in his team, he didn't really follow anyone because he was like the best, and so he only followed himself. He just led himself. So when he was trying to coach a team, he didn't know how to lead his team because he only knew how to follow himself. So the first step is being a leader is first knowing how to follow. So Jesus said to them, "Come with me, I'll make a new kind of fisherman out of you. I'll show you how to catch men and women instead of perch and brass." They didn't ask questions, but simply dropped their nets and followed. Mark 4 verse 19. So this is an example. Jesus, before the disciples became leaders and before they did their ministry, the disciples first had to learn from Jesus, and Jesus also had to learn. He trained for 30 years and only ministered for 3 years. So to become a leader, first we have to follow. We have to examine, and we have to train and watch other people also. So there's 2 types of leader. A leader this isn't a real leader. A leader who think that they're in charge. They think that they're a leader just because of their title. They think they have the authority. A true leader is this column. So a person in charge will say they will drive workers, but a true leader coaches workers. And then a person in charge depends on authority, but a true leader depends on goodwill. A person in charge inspires fear, and a true leader inspires enthusiasm. A person in charge says I, and a true leader says we. So Pastor Keith, he gave an example to us about him and his Pathfinders. Pastor Keith was in charge of drilling a team, and whenever there's this boy whose name was Joshua, and Joshua sometimes made mistakes, and whenever he caused a problem, Pastor Keith will tell him to do 10 push-ups. But instead of Joshua just doing the 10 push-ups by himself, Pastor Keith will actually do it with him. So it kind of forms a relationship, a unity, and it makes a we. And then also a person in charge fixes blame for breakdown. So instead of actually fixing the real problem, they just find out who did the problem. But a true leader fixes the problem. A person in charge knows how it was done, and a true leader shows how to do it. Just like I said, the example, Pastor Keith, he didn't just watch Joshua do the 10 push-ups. He showed him how to do it. And a person in charge says go, and a true leader says let's go. So the first step of being a leader is the right. People, like I said, people think that just having the title as a leader makes you a leader, but that's not what makes you a leader. There's an example of a hall monitor. If they have to show evidence, yeah, I'm a hall monitor, then that shows insecurity. It doesn't show that you're showing true leadership. A true leadership has to deal with just through your actions, they know that you're a leader, that you don't have to point it out. And so a really big key inside this ladder is relationship. A real leadership is being the person others will gladly and confidently follow. For me, this is a big deal. When someone tries to lead, for example, when inside school there's someone who always helped me, who always helped me fix my problems, who was always there with me when I needed help. They were always there, so they built a relationship with me, and I would gladly follow them. But when there's this one person, he was angry because our class wasn't following what they were saying. I didn't really have I wasn't really quick to obey them, because they just assume that they have the authority just because they have the leader. But that's it. You need to build a relationship. It begins with the heart, and you need to spend time, energy, and focus on the people's needs and desires. Really don't try to skip this step. A lot of people try to skip relationship, but this is such a huge deal. For example, take example for a husband. A husband becomes a great provider for the family, but in the process, he neglects the essential relationship that holds the family together. And instead of neglecting the relationships, building a trust between him and his daughters and his wife and someone else will become their daddy. You can love people without leading them, but you cannot lead people without loving them. After this, results start to happen, productivity starts to happen. When you just build the people, the ministry will build itself. So you kind of got to focus on the people. And when their needs are met, then you can work together. And the fourth thing is reproduction. Being a leader doesn't mean that you're going to hold that position forever in your life. You have to pass down that leadership. Moses passed down his leadership to Joshua. He didn't keep it all to himself. So you got to build other people too. And the last step is respect. When you build relationships, you earn respect. Everything comes in hand if you follow these 5 steps, which is right relationships results reproduction and ultimate respect. And this is a quote that he gave us: if you are leading and no one is following, you are not leading. You are merely out for a walk. So, yeah. And how to become a people developer. You need to listen to your people's need, and you have to pass on your knowledge to the next people, because you gotta share your knowledge so that someone else could lead the people too.
Okay, so mine is about things that every youth leader should know. And it was my first time going to empowerment, and I'm pretty glad for going, because if if Ophelia or Kathleen hadn't persisted me, motivated me, I wouldn't have an experience like that. Even though it was kind of tiring because I had to wake up at 6, it was worth it. So, first of all, you should have a common vision. Know your senior's pastor's vision and make it your own. If the pastor's stressed, you get less. And incorporate the youth and pastor's wants. Sorry. Okay. And incorporate the youth and pastor's wants or suggestions by combining the two. Why is it important to have a common vision? It's important because if the pastor and the youth don't have a common vision, there wouldn't be any progress. No one would go anywhere. Nothing will be done. And it's important to let the pastor be involved, because the pastor knows that he only wants for the good of the youth. He only wants to lead them in the right direction. He's not going to try to withhold them or lead them somewhere they shouldn't be going. And it's important to consider the youth's suggestions as well, because not always the pastor and the youth will meet eye to eye, but it's better to meet at a compromise where two of the suggestions will be met and the two will be happy with the decision made. Secondly, invite other leaders to youth meetings to speak or participate. Something new, something fresh. Get a break, develop leadership. Why is it important? It's important to get something new, something fresh, because if you do the same routine over and over, especially with teens and young adults, they tend to get bored. And if they get bored, they're not going to listen. And you wouldn't be teaching them like you should be. So it's important to invite other people that have new ideas, like new ways to teach or to present different things that you haven't touched upon or you haven't recognized while you were teaching them. And plus, it's good to take a break, because if you take on all the responsibility on yourself all the time, you end up being burnt out, and then you might end up possibly quitting your youth as being a youth leader, and no one wants that. Third thing is be a disciple yourself. Serve, pay tithe, worship, read, pray, and honor. Set an example for the youth. And if you're not building a relationship with God, then you could do so much. So it's important to do as any Christian would do, any good Christian would do. Pray, read, pretty much the basics. The reason why is because you're a leader. You're the leader of the youth, and you wouldn't want to set a bad example for them. For instance, if you stop praying before you eat, the youth will catch on because you influence them. You're their leader, and they look up to you. So if you start doing something bad, they'll end up doing something bad. They'll end up catching or picking up that bad habit. So you should be a good example, the best as you can. And if you don't continue your relationship with God, you can teach so much to the kids. It's like, for example, it's in school. Let's see me. Let's say I'm in math. I'm in pre-cal, and my teacher is Miss Williamson. How can I teach AP calculus student calculus, even though I just know pre-calculus. So it's impossible for me. So it's important to continue your relationship with God so you can expand more to the youth and share the information and help them grow spiritually and mentally and physically. Be active in building relationships. So when the seminar was, the presentation given by Eric Pennick, I felt this was really important in what every youth leader should know, because it all starts with the relationship. Be involved with the youth's personal lives, make better relationships, pray with youth, remember birthdays, small message scriptures, express acknowledgement and encouragement. So it's important to be close with your youth, because how can you expect to teach someone, like for someone to understand and retain the information you've been teaching them if they don't like you? If they don't like you, they're not going to listen to you. So it's good to remember their names, especially their names, because it's embarrassing to not to know their name. If you say, oh, hey, you, come here. And then they're going to feel offended. They're like, you don't even remember my name? And also remember birthdays. It's nice for someone to say a happy birthday to you, and it makes them feel included. It makes them feel welcome. And it's good to mention once in a while, like a small message scriptures. If you see them down, or if you see them if there's something wrong with them, just give them like a little excerpt from the Bible, and it could be their little pick-me-up, and so then they wouldn't be as sad. And it's important to express acknowledgement. So if they did something good or they listened, you should be like, oh, thank you, and encourage them to do good deeds, and they'll tend to trust and build themselves in you. It's important to be loving, thankful. Don't be just one of their peers. Be someone that they can confine themselves in their time of need. Be a place of safety. Listen, read, and watch. Builds trust and security. So it's important to be loving, more thankful, because you as a youth leader, you're not expected to be one of their peers. Your job isn't supposed to be one of the kids or one of the guys or whatever, because you're the leader who's supposed to lead them, not be one of their friends. If they just want to be with one of their friends, they could just go to their house, or they could just go to school and hang out with their friends. They can go anywhere with their friends. But as for you, you should be the person that they can pour themselves into. If they have a problem or an issue, you should be the person that they reflect upon. Like, they should go to you when they're in their time of need. If they're sad, if they're down, if there's something wrong, they should be able to trust you for them to tell you their personal life or personal issues. So it could be a place of safety. And it's important to listen, read, and watch. It's important to listen to the kids. It's important to read their emotions and to watch them, see if there's anything wrong or if anything is troubling them. And from that, it builds their trust and security, so they will be able to they allow themselves to be open to you, and that's what you want as a youth leader. Confront sin. Let the youth, when something is a sin, confront sin and be direct. Be loving and appropriate. Do not judge. So it's a common, like, everyone is a culprit, or they're guilty of this. Like, sometimes people say, oh no, that's not that bad. It's not really a sin. Like, if you do a little white lie, it's like, oh, it's okay. It's okay to lie. Just if it's not that bad. Like, or if you're trying to protect someone, it's like the common saying, honesty is the best policy. So if a youth, if an individual from the youth asks you, oh, is taking drugs bad? Like, and then don't be around the bush. If you do, they're gonna have a misinterpretation, like, oh, smoking weed is bad. Smoking cigarettes not that bad, and then they'll lead to, you know, turmoil and problems. And it's important to be direct and tell them explicitly what is a sin and what is not a sin. And when you do confront them about what they have been doing as a sin, don't be judgmental. Be loving and appropriate. Because if you make them, if you judge them, they're gonna regret it and resent themselves, like, for the rest of their lives or something. And you wouldn't want that. You just want the better for them. You just want them to improve and progress in themselves so they could be better Christians every day. Learn about disappointment. Not everything will work out as according to plan. Do not dwell in the past. Keep on pressing forward. So it's important to accept disappointment, because not everyone is perfect, but we strive to be perfect. So it's good to accept disappointment and just keep on moving, keep on pressing forward. Because if you dwell on disappointment, you're not going to get anywhere in life. You can't teach them if you're like, oh man, we didn't follow through with AY, or it didn't turn out that well. So it's pointless. It's like picking split ends of your hair. So you should just move on and not dwell in the failures you've done. Don't be afraid to change the program or where you sit. Take the initiative to be the game changer, the peacemaker. Don't let things just go how they are. Compromise, forgive, and forget. So this slide is talking about that you should, if there is something wrong in the youth, within the youth, you or the youth leader, or between the individual or the individuals among themselves, it's important not to let them let it be as they are. So if example, me and Kathleen, let's say we have a problem together, and you can tell if we don't sit next to each other, we don't talk to each other, we don't say happy Sabbath to each other, you know there's something wrong. And you as a youth leader, you should be able to help and solve the issue at hand. You wouldn't want your youth to be segregated, but instead you want them to be together, unified as one. And if you have a problem with one of the youth, talk it out. Don't be an immature adult and let things go how they are. Don't be like one of the kids. Be the bigger man and fix the problem. And most importantly, listen, love, and be available to your teens. Youth needs a safe place. Love is greater than being cool. Christianity means inclusion, not exclusion. Every aspect of the church is important, and ministry is like a tag team. So from the presentation that Eric Pennick gave to us, this is what I got as the most important conclusion of his presentation. The youth come to the AY or to the youth leader not only just to have fun, but a place that they feel safe, they're secure, they can be themselves, and they can relax. And it's important to be loved more than cool, because they're not there for they're just your friends. They want a person they can be themselves and be loved, and not to be, oh, hey guys, like just hang out. And Christianity, like you don't exclude anyone. You have to include everyone. That's the main point of this whole thing is if you exclude people, they're gonna end up being driven away and not having any more hope or faith into the youth, and that they might stray away into something bad. And every aspect of church is important. It's important for the whole church to be involved in the youth, because if we exclude one thing, and we end up excluding another thing and another thing and another thing. But it's important to let the church be involved in the youth as a whole, so the youth can intake different information, different things that they haven't learned or they haven't known about. And plus, ministry is a tag team. In Luke 10, 1 through 3, it shows a perfect example of how ministry is supposed to be like a tag team. It says, "After these things, the Lord appointed 70 others also, and sent them 2 by 2 before his face and into every city and place where he himself was about to go. Then he said to them, 'The harvest is truly great, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Go your way. Behold, I send you out as lamb among the wolves.'" So it's important to work as a team when it involves the youth. So as youth leaders, you should include everyone in the development of the youth, so the youth can prosper and maybe one day be leaders themselves.
Happy Sabbath, everyone. So this was my second time going to the empowerment ministry, and I just have to say it was good to add more experience, and it was a real blessing, and I was glad to take Deepai with us this time. So what I'm going to touch up are they're a couple, they're a married couple. It's Charmaine Gray and Keith Gray. And I found these two to be very intellectual, and what touched me was for the devotion service in the morning, Pastor Keith Gray, he would pray in song, and he has probably the most beautiful voice I've ever heard. And at that time, I didn't know that Charmaine Gray, the person the seminar I went to, was his wife. And so I noticed something similar. When she started the seminar, she also sang with the prayer. And I told my friend, "Oh, she has such a nice voice, just like that pastor." She was like, "It's because they're married." And so I was like, oh, that makes sense. So the first one is anyone listening? This seminar was practically building relationships and showing examples of when relationships are broken. And in today's world and also in the past, it's very important to understand how relationships work, so there won't be a bad relationship. You will know how to control the situation, and you know how to save relationships from failing. So the first question is, what is love? And the definition, it is meeting the need of others. Notice here it says others. It's not between only two people. It's not between yourself. It means that it's unlimited. Love can be defined in many ways, and it can be shared to many people. There are 3 types of love. The first is called eros, love most attributed to the senses. There are 5 senses that we have: touch, smell, hear, sight, and taste. In this case, it can be used as love at first sight, and also a love for food and smell. This type of love, it's God-given, but it's not intended, and it's not capable of sustaining relationships for a long time. Then there's phileo. This is, she named it brotherly love. And it's when I love you and you love me in return. It's a very deep love. It's the deepest love a human can establish. And then there's agape, a love of decision. I love you regardless. This is also an important type of love because it shows that despite of the other person's flaws, despite of what wrong things they've done to you, you love them out of choice. You love them already considering all their flaws, and you just choose to love them. Then there's 5 levels of communication. Level 1 are the cliches. basically the communication she was talking about was within the church. In this case, level 1, it's just to that person where the only thing you've actually ever said to them was happy Sabbath, and that's how far, that's up to level 1, how it goes. Then there's level 2, sharing of facts. You start stating stuff, maybe it's out of the blue or just to make up conversation, like, oh, it's so sunny today. And again, that's how far level 2 goes. Then there's level 3, when you state opinions, and this is probably the hardest thing to share. It's when you can become paranoid. It's when, because it's coming from yourself, it's because you're sharing what you think, it's easier for you to think that you're also being judged at the same time. And it is true, not everyone will agree with what you think, not everyone will agree with your opinions. But if you can overcome this level, then true communication can be established, which is where level 4 is at. That's when we share our feelings. Sharing our feelings is also a hard thing to do, but it's the true communication. It's when you're able to tell that person how you're doing, how your day was, into depth, and in hope of a response in return. And finally, level 5, revealing and expressing our needs. This is when all feel safe to think for themselves, and it's also in a scenario where you told me a secret and we will talk about it again in secret. So you already understand each other, you understand how to respond, and you know that when they're talking to you, it's good to respond, and when they're in need of help, it's good to give advice. Then there are the reasons why relationships fail. One or both withdraw during an argument. This is critical because it's when two people are fighting and maybe they don't want to see, they just can't stand the sight of the person, or they just have so much to say and they're just so mad that they leave the argument unfinished, unresolved, and again, it leads to failure in relationships. There's also escalation during the argument. This is matching the tone of voice. When one person is screaming, the other person was like, "Okay, you can't hear me, so I'm gonna scream louder." And then the other person's like, "Well, I'm gonna scream louder." So it's like, again, nothing gets resolved. You just want to be the dominant voice. You want to be heard. Then there's invalidating the other's feelings, needs, or uniqueness. A lot of times when relationships are failing, you forget what made you love the person in the first place, and then you start neglecting their wants. Maybe it just becomes awkward within the relationship, and this is probably the point where maybe the girl or maybe the guy, they're very up to their sensitivity, tolerance, and they're like, "Okay, we need to split up. You're not watching anymore. You're not listening to me," and you forget about the charms that you fall for, and you're just blocking them out. Then there's the negative belief. I think this is pretty common. It's when in an argument, you're stating the negative points, such as, "You always do this, you always do that," or "You never do this," or "You never do that." And there's also, even if there's one exception, there's an exception. I think this statement can be a part of the solution where you can stop to think about it, and if you're at that point where you're just about to explode, or when you're just going to say, "I'm done, there's no more point in trying to solve this relationship," just stop for a minute and think of one good thing. That one good thing can actually save something good from ending very bad and from things not getting finished. Then there's new goals for communication. Your goal is not to win. You never display that you won, because it shows that someone lost, and that causes them to shut down. And it's not good to brag, of course. It's always good to be humble, but again, when you do win, you know that there is a fact that someone lost, and so it's very good to just stay humble. Then there's listening and understanding. This is a given, where you listen to the person's need, you listen to the person itself in general, and you understand them. You can understand by expressing that you understand it, or from then on, something changes. And if you follow these two, both conflicts can be healthy. And then I'm going to touch upon Pastor Keith Gray. So for the morning devotions, he was talking about Moses at the burning bush. Before I touch on to that, I'm going to touch on upon something. First of all, it's basically leadership, part of leadership, and our perspective on what leadership is and how we do it. And what Pastor Keith Gray says, it's something you have to think about it again and again and probably say it out loud again and again to understand. What you think God is calling you for is not what he's calling you for. So what DeFi was advising me about, this is actually, you cannot assume that once God calls you to do something, you already know what he's calling you for to do, and just like that, you just reject it because you're like, okay, I know where this is going and I'm not going to do it. You cannot do that because God is probably calling you to do something else, and you're just completely throwing the opportunities away. Then there is where you answer to God's call and you're like, okay, I am going to listen to you, God, and I'm going to be a disciple. But it's how are you going to try to save other people when you yourself are having a hard time trying to save yourself? So it's like being hypocritical. If you're not in a good situation, and if you yourself are not mentally, physically, spiritually established, you cannot tell someone about God. You cannot really try to enforce them to join the church because you're having problems yourself, and there can be misunderstanding, misleading, and the person you're trying to reach will know that, okay, this guy's not serious. I know what you're going through. It's better if you try to save yourself first before trying to get other people to follow God's steps. But then Pastor Keith said that our job is actually not as a savior but a deliverer. Our job as a deliverer is to go into the world, pick up the package, whatever that package is, and to go deliver it. This is important because he said a deliverer in another term is being like a UPS, Holy Ghost, someone who delivers packages, and God is the one who does the saving. You cannot think that my job here, I can save you, but it's not. You're just merely an instrument of God. And the thing with that is once you do understand that you're just a mere deliverer, you drop the package, you leave it there, and then you simply go on to deliver other packages. You cannot spend so much time on one package because you realize that there are more people in the world to deliver packages to. And so then we're going to touch on Moses and the burning bush. If we all open our Bibles to Exodus 3, this is where it all happens. And we all know the story of Moses, how he's taking care of his cattle, and he's just walking upon a mountain, a hill, and he stops and realizes that there is a burning bush. And the background with Moses is that he was born as a Hebrew, but he grew up as an Egyptian. And as his early years or his early moments in his life where he was living as an Egyptian, he was being neglected a lot. He had different skin tone, he stuck out, but the thing is, once he realized that, he tried to go mingle with the Hebrews. He realized they're much more compatible with I am. So he tried his best to to be part of the Hebrews. But the thing is, the Egyptians didn't want him, and the Hebrews were just like, you're an Egyptian, you don't fit in with us. So they didn't want him either. So Moses really, he had an identity crisis. In verse 5, Exodus 3, verse 5, when God first told him to come near the bush, he said, "Do not draw near this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground." And this is a symbolism where when you're taking off your sandals, God is basically telling him to take off his personality. Forget who you are and just think of yourself as a person that I'm calling you for. And so Moses God said in verse 10, he tells Moses what the mission he's trying to get Moses to do. "Come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." Then Moses responded in verse 11, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and of that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? Now you remember Moses, he is confused with who he is. And so the fact that God's calling him to do this, he's like, I don't even know who I am. What place am I to do this for you, Lord? And God responds, who you are does not matter as who you're with. And God wants Moses to know that despite you being confused, not knowing your origin, not knowing who yourself is as a person, as long as I'm with you, you'll be safe, you'll be fine, and that's all you need to know for now. And Pastor Keith Touch said, the greatest thing that God can do for you is to call you to it. And as you read up, as you read up on verse 12, Moses was just asking God, okay, if I'm going to do this and they ask me who sent me, what do I tell them? And God said that when you go up to them in verse 13, indeed, when I come to the children of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers sent me, and they say to me, what is your name? What shall I say to them? God says, I am who I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am who sent me to you. And for the first time in Bible history, God has actually identified himself, what's his name, and what we can refer to the God that we worship to. And as a conclusion, what Pastor Keith said, that as we read along, God says that I am the father of Abraham, I am the father of Isaac, I am the father of Jacob. What God wants us to do is he wants to add our names. As long as we've already trusted God and we've had full faith in him, and know that if we just, despite of who we are in this world, as long as we have God, we can be saved. And he will add our name unto his name, and that will be such an honor and a blessing. So in conclusion, from me, Gatlin, and Deepai, our experience in leadership, the empowerment ministry, is from leadership, from learning more about the Bible, and from knowing how to teach kids. Kids and others. It's important to share them with others. Us doing this sermon is to share with the congregation what we learned, in hope that the congregation itself will take from what we've taught, we've elaborated on, and they will go out and do the same as well. And that is our sermon for today. Thank you.